Good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Indiana Sports Now with Kent Sterling. It's Tuesday, April 6th, 2021. We're brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry, Dr. Mike O'Neill, the best dentist that there is. If you've got the chance to employ the best dentist in the world to take good care of your dental health, why would you not do that? Give him a call. 317-849-2933 is the number. Hit subscribe, hit like, ring the bell. Let's go. Let's talk about Indiana sports. There are a lot of rumors out there about Armaan Franklin, where he might go, where he might not go, whether he's coming back to Indiana, whether he's looking at Illinois or Louisville or Notre Dame or whatever. You know what? Don't pay him any heed. We'll know when we know. Right now, Armaan has Indiana on his pinned tweet, so let's take that as a good sign. And if it's not a good sign, that's fine too, because this is Indiana. I was listening to Dane Fife on the Dan Dockett show this afternoon. Dane Fife said, we don't beg anybody. We're Indiana. That's exactly right. If Armaan Franklin and Race Thompson decide to come back to Indiana, you know what? Good. That's fine. But let's face facts. Armaan Franklin and Race Thompson and all the other guys who played for Indiana last year finished 10th in the Big Ten. They have never played for an Indiana team that has had a winning Big Ten record. And while we hope that all of them come back and that they all play as Indiana finds itself on the right end of the ledger next year, assuming that that's the case with Mike Woodson and Thad Matta and Dane Fife and maybe Larry Brown being a part of the program, without some of those players, how bad do you think it's going to get for Indiana? It's not like they're returning a Big Ten championship team where guys are deciding maybe to opt out. This was a 10th place team in the Big Ten that did not go to the NCAA Tournament for the 5th year in a row. So let's not get it twisted and start to think that the success or failure of Indiana basketball is going to be determined by whether Armaan Franklin or Race Thompson decide whether they are going to return or ply their wares elsewhere for another basketball program. It ain't worth begging. If they want to come back, come back. If not, Mike Woodson and his staff will find people who do want to play at Indiana and will comport themselves appropriately. It's all going to be fine. Speaking of that, let's talk about the NCAA Tournament and the NCAA Championship game last night. Baylor won last night. Baylor was dominant last night, but that does not mean necessarily that Baylor would be dominant if these two teams played 5 times. It's not inconceivable that Gonzaga would win once, twice, or maybe even 3 times. And it's absolutely ludicrous to talk about Mark Few being a coach who cannot win the big game, or that Mark Few somehow is not as good a coach as Scott Drew because Scott Drew won that game last night. Gonzaga, they were terrific throughout the regular season. Baylor, they were really good last night, man. And this is what happens when a team that can shoot gets hot shooting it and rebounds the ball exceptionally well. If you can shoot and you can rebound, you can beat anybody in the country. And that's something that is not lost on Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and Thad Matta and Larry Brown and all the guys who are in charge of making sure that Indiana gets back to some form of relevance moving forward in the world of college basketball. We'll see what happens next year with college basketball. I think it's going to be fascinating. I do think that Indiana fans have to slow their roll a little bit. In the comments in our YouTube channel, had a guy rank Indiana 3rd among Big Ten teams behind Michigan and Michigan State, just ahead of Purdue. Tap the brakes just a little bit. Indiana hadn't beaten Purdue. You got kids in kindergarten who have never been alive when Indiana has beaten Purdue. So let's just tap the brakes and understand this may not be a long process, but we shouldn't expect miracles right out of the gate with Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and Thad Matta and Larry Brown and Kenya Hunter. We forgot to mention Kenya Hunter. Of course we should mention Kenya Hunter. So let's remember from whence we came. It's been 34 years since Indiana hung a meaningful banner at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Been a long time since Indiana got it done. Might be a little bit while longer. And if they go to a Final Four at some point during Mike Woodson's reign as head coach at Indiana, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Man, I'll tell you what, there might be a bee shortage in this country, but there isn't a bee shortage right here. Holy Moses. Wow. Got to play a little defense, right? Got to be nimble. Got to move our feet. Got to be agile with our hips. Holy cow. This is not comfortable at all. Anyway, let's get back to sports. Let's talk about the city of Indianapolis and ignore these bees for the time being. I hope they aren't stinging bees or I got problems. So the Volunteers with the NCAA and with the city of Indianapolis, and I'm going to move my ass. That's uncomfortable, and I cannot focus on a damn thing. All right, let's talk. They got agitated all of a sudden. I got to get the hell out of there. The NCAA and the Volunteers in Indiana did a wonderful job of presenting a tournament in a way that meant a lot to the people who came here, participated, the families who came here. It was wonderful. It is something that Indiana is really, really good at hosting. Big events is something that this city does exceptionally well. This city was specifically designed to host events just like that 55 years ago. The mayor, some other guys, they got together. It was Dick Lugar, it was Jim Morris, a lot of guys sat around the table, said, okay, what do we want to be known for? And the answer was, let's focus all our attention on hosting a Summer Olympics. Now, that didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. But what happened out of those conversations and out of the plans that sprung from those conversations came Indianapolis as a host city for gigantic sporting events, and nobody does it better. And no group of volunteers is friendlier than those in Indianapolis. This city and its stable of volunteers and the way it's designed is the envy of every city in the country that wants to host these events. Congratulations to everybody who took part in it. Hey, a little bit later tonight, 7 o'clock, we've got the Pacers and the Bulls. Basketball doesn't end just because college basketball is over. Pacers, they got to get some things straight. They got to start winning games, especially home games against a team like the Chicago Bulls. They got to get going. If they want to play a meaningful role in the postseason this year, Nate Bjorkgren's first season as the head coach of the Pacers, they have got to get that done starting tonight against the Bulls, because really what we're entering is the last 6-7 weeks of the regular season, and the Pacers have got to get going. If they're not, like right now, they'd be in the playoffs, but just by that much. And the goal of this team, if the goal was to kind of eke your way into the playoffs and lose in the first round, they should have held on to Nate McMillan, because at least he was going to finish 4th or 5th in the conference, and you had a chance to get to the second round. If you finish 9th or 10th, that isn't going to happen. So hopefully Domas Sabonis and Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Lamb are all active tonight and able to play. Well, I want to talk about one of my favorite Colts teams. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the Colts of the future, what the roster is, what the roster is going to be. But what I want to talk about today is my favorite team of all the teams, the team that really turned this city right where it came to professional football and being a professional football fan. And that was in 1995. When I moved here in 1993, we started going to games. And we came from Chicago, where football fans are pretty savvy. Chicago Bears, one of the original franchises of the NFL. They started out as the Decatur Staleys, and then they migrated to become the Chicago Bears. A lot of good fans in Chicago. So when we came here and games were being played in the Hoosier Dome, first game I went to, it was very, very quiet in 1993. And when we stood up, big third down for the defense, stood up and started yelling like you would in a lot of different NFL stadiums, people behind us told us to sit down and shut up. They were Colts fans. Told us to sit down. Hey, sit down. We can't see. And I turned around and said, hey, stand up. What the hell's the matter with you people? So that was my entree to Indianapolis Colts football. And that entree was made much more pleasant by what happened in 1995. We'll see if the bees have moved on. I hope that they have and that they don't return, or we've got problems. But that 1995 team went 9-7. They went to the playoffs. They advanced to the AFC Championship game despite the fact that Marshall Faulk was hurt late in the season. And as he was hurt late in the season, you had guys like Zach Crockett and Lamont Warren step into the breach and play really, really good football. In the AFC Championship game, they advanced to that championship game because of Lynn Elliott. And if you talk to Kansas City Chiefs fans, they'll still curse Lynn Elliott for what he did in 95. And that was go 0 for 3 kicking field goals. 2 of them were in the 30s. 1 of them was in the 40s. Lynn Elliott couldn't make those kicks. And so, as a result, the Indianapolis Colts go to Pittsburgh, play at Three Rivers Stadium in the AFC Championship game, one of the greatest games in the history of the National Football League. Jim Harbaugh as the quarterback, captain comeback. I have no love for Jim Harbaugh, but holy moly, was he good that season. He was absolutely terrific as the quarterback of the Colts. Whether he knew what he was doing or not, he found a way to get it done. And in Pittsburgh, almost did it again. The Colts, they took a 16-13 lead. I was at Three Rivers Stadium wearing a Marshall Faulk jersey, right? Not really thinking too clearly. Had a very good time as the guests of some people from Pittsburgh. And Vince Trombetta and Ed Hijack ran a great tailgate party where Steve Simpson, who worked at WIBC with me, I worked with him. We had a great time. Then we go into the stadium. And wearing the Colts jersey, everything was cool as long as the Pittsburgh Steelers had the lead. And then late, when Floyd Turner catches that touchdown pass from Harbaugh and the Colts take a fourth quarter 16-13 lead, people are turning around looking at me like, okay, there's a guy in the Colts jersey. He's back about 4 rows. If this thing doesn't go our way, that's who we're going to take it out on. So there's that touchdown. And I'm thinking, as I watch all these guys, it's about 45 degrees. And there are a lot of guys shirtless and looped, right, who are checking me. Okay, there's that guy. Okay. And so the Steelers move the ball down the field. Quentin Coriat almost has an interception. If he gets the interception, the game's over. And I think I lose my life. I think they'd have beaten me to a pulp as retribution for, and don't wear jerseys of opposing teams into a stadium you're visiting. Don't do that. Coriat did not hold on to the ball. Pittsburgh, they knock it into the end zone, a 1-yard rush by Bam Morris, and all of a sudden, the Steelers have a lead with a minute and a half left. Jim Harbaugh, not to be denied, leads the Colts down the field to the Steeler 29, throws a ball into the end zone as time expires. It's batted around. It lands on Aaron Bailey, who is a wide receiver for the Colts, lands on his stomach, and it rolls off. And so the Colts do not go to the Super Bowl. If the Colts had gone to the Super Bowl, I'm telling you, they would have beaten the Dallas Cowboys. It was electric. It was magical. Every time the Colts won in the playoffs, when they beat the Chargers and then when they beat the Chiefs, about 10,000 people went to the airport and welcomed home the Colts as they deplaned in the terminal. How about that for a little change? Right, they flew back and got off at a gate in the terminal instead of deplaning on the tarmac and getting straight in buses. And so they had people kind of cordoned off, people cheered, and it was awesome. And it was then that Indianapolis kind of became a Colts city, not necessarily when Peyton Manning was drafted by the Colts, but in 95, all of a sudden things tilted a little bit, and people got very, very psyched about the Indianapolis Colts. 9-7, wins at the Chargers, win at the Chiefs thanks to Lynn Elliott, and then, oh, so close, a loss in Pittsburgh, just heartbreaking. And on the way out of the stadium, on the way out of Three Rivers, we're walking next to a chain link fence, and I'm still wearing the Faulk jersey, and I hear a bottle crash against a chain link fence about 3 feet over my head. Then I hear another one. Then I hear a third. And I think, hey, somebody really doesn't like that fence. I turn, and people are pointing at me and throwing bottles at me. The hell is going on, Pittsburgh fans? Got the hell out of there, and I swear this is true. We took a cab, Steve and I, back to our hotel in downtown Pittsburgh and saw outside of bars, this was about a 3-mile drive, saw 5 straight-up fistfights. Wham! Like that. Not like typical guy bar fights where people are wrestling and whatnot. These guys are throwing haymakers at each other and knocking each other around. Pittsburgh is a tough guy's city. People were very nice to us there until they weren't, and then holy moly, were they not nice to us. Anyway, the 1995 Colts team, absolutely a complete favorite. Wonderful. If you were there, you enjoyed the living hell out of it and you understand what I'm talking about. If not, you probably think that this city's love affair with the Colts began in 1999, Peyton Manning's second year, where the Colts went 13-3, went to the playoffs, and we kind of fell in love with Peyton and Marvin and Tarek and all those guys. But I think it started about 4 years earlier than that, with the 95 team led by Jim Harbaugh and anchored by an awesome offensive line, including the great Big Joe Stasiak, the Buckeye bulldozer. Tomorrow morning, Breakfast with Kent. Maybe we know where Armaan Franklin's going. Maybe we don't. Maybe the same with Race Thompson. But you know what? I don't think it matters. The Hoosiers, they're going to be all right. With Armaan, without Armaan, same thing with Race. It's all going to be good. We've turned a corner with Indiana basketball, and I can't wait to see it pay off down the road. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Breakfast with Kent, bright and early, 8 o'clock on Facebook Live, and immediately thereafter on YouTube. Hit subscribe, like, ring the bell, do all that stuff. I appreciate it.